As my session description says, I will be sharing my journey as a mental health advocate, but also my journey through mental illness. As stated in my bio, I am a mental health advocate. I have suffered 3 nervous breakdowns between the ages of 24 to 35. Throughout those periods of time, I did spend time in a mental health institution. The first two were private institutions. The last one was Shoal Creek, where I spent the majority of my time. During my last stay at Shoal Creek Hospital, I spent 2 weeks and I was admitted into the PICU, which is the Psychiatric Intensive Care Unit. It's used for acute crisis as well as those who may be wanting to harm themselves. During that time, I did give up on life and I had thoughts of suicide. It first started when I went to my mother and I told her that I didn't want to do life anymore and if she would keep my children. And of course, she went on alert. She reached out to Shoal Creek and they told her to bring me in and they did an evaluation when I got there. With my consent, I stayed and was admitted. That was the scariest day, one of the scariest days of my life. Although that was a scary period, it was vital for me to get the help that I needed so that I could continue to care for my children. Giving up on life was not um, giving up on life was not the final place for me to be. I had to get back. I had to fight like hell to get the care that I needed while I was there. The final thing that happened for me to be placed in the hospital was one night I was at home and I was going through one of my moments of uh, not wanting to be alive. My children were asleep and I was up and I went into the bathroom in the dark. And at that time, I had very low self esteem. I didn't love myself. I didn't want to see myself in the mirror. I didn't think I was pretty enough. And I compared myself to everything that was around me. You know, you see things in social media and you just feel like you don't add up. And then also just family dynamics. So I was in the bathroom and my hair was much longer at the time, and I had a pair of scissors. I was standing over the sink and I was literally cutting all my hair off, which led to my hair being a lot shorter now. But I like it this way. But at the time, I didn't understand what the connection was. But I cut my hair off. So when I went home, there was a sink full of hair, and I didn't understand why until I thought back of what happened. I also realized the reason that I did those things in the dark because I didn't think I was good enough. I thought I was ugly, and I didn't want to see myself. I didn't want to see my reflection in the mirror. So I went in the bathroom all the time in the dark. While I was at the hospital, I noticed that I did the same thing. I didn't want to see a reflection. I didn't want to see a mirror at all. Also, during the time of my stay in the hospital and when I got out, I realized that I had trigger months. And my trigger months were from October to January, starting with my birthday, ending with the new year. And I guess the association of all of those holidays and being happy and the celebrations that you see all these families and these couples with, I didn't see that for myself. And I so wanted that for myself and my children. And I was very lonely. So during those months are when I had the hardest time. To get more information about triggers, please read my Hoover profile. I put an extensive definition there, but I can give you a short definition of what that is. Triggers are external events or circumstances that may cause uncomfortable emotional or psychiatric symptoms such as anxiety, panic, discouragement, despair, or negative self talk. During my stay at Shoal Creek, I literally felt like I was fighting demons. I was hearing voices telling me that I had a choice to pick my mother and father, who had just been diagnosed with 2 forms of cancer, or to pick my children. And if I didn't pick one or the other, that I was never going to get out. So that alone was like torment in my mind because I never wanted to make a choice between two sides that were so important and vital to my growth and just my pure existence. So that was very hard for me to figure out how I was going to maneuver making a choice between the two. That's not a place that you ever want to come to. I remember one particular visit when my parents came to visit me. I think I had been there maybe a week or so, and they brought my children, and it was my two children and my mother and father. And I know I looked horrible at the time. I had given up. My hair was choppy. Maybe yes or no taking baths. I just felt like death at the time. But when I saw them, I saw a light around them. Um, they looked healthy. They looked like they were going to be okay. And that was just the confirmation that I needed to see in order to keep pressing to get into a place where I was going to heal. My father told me at that time that he had been in places like Shoal Creek before, and that I didn't I was not supposed to be there, and that I needed to get myself together and get out. At that moment was the light came on for me in a sense. I fought like hell. I spoke to the doctor and I asked him to decrease my medication so that I can get to a space where I felt like I had some type of control. I remember there being a gentleman in there that I feel like he was my angel. After I started my medication and it was lowered, I would get up and he would sit down. He would eat lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when he sat down, I followed everything he ate on his plate. It was almost like I felt like a robot. So if he picked up a piece of bread, I picked up a piece of bread. He drank milk, I drank milk. And it was like it was a ritual. We had no words that we would ever say when we sat down. We just sat down at the same time, ate, and then we got up and we left each other. Me and him really never ever had words, but it's almost like he was placed there to watch over me during my time. There was one dream that I had. I don't know if it was a dream or a vision, but I know God gave it to me because it was a dream of light. He showed me a peephole in a door. It was just a tiny little hole, and I couldn't see my body. I couldn't see where I was, but I could look out through the peephole and I could see myself that I was on some type of platform. And there were thousands of people looking back at me, and they were listening to me or waiting for me to speak. And I kind of backed off of the peephole, like, why are you showing me this? Like, I'm in a mental institution. No one wants to hear me talk. But later, I had to realize that what I was seeing is where I was going. He showed me a vision of the things that I will be doing. I just couldn't see it at that time because I was hazy, I was foggy, I wasn't in my right mind. But in hindsight, it gave me so much to look forward to when I left the hospital. The other thing is, I remember when we finally had an opportunity to go downstairs and stand out, like on, there was like a patio that was enclosed, but there was light at the top that you could see. And I remember standing outside, and the best feeling in the world was the sun hitting my face. I knew God was in that, and He was watching over me and protecting me and letting me know you're okay. So before I left the hospital, I promised him that if you get me out of this hospital, I will help everyone that you send my way to help them back into the light. Because basically, you're in a dark space and you never know when you're going to get out. And somebody needs a little light in order to come out of that. I share my story because I don't take anything that I do for granted. I know the things that I endured were not for me. They were for the people that I come in contact with, the people that inbox me or email me or send me a phone call. And there are many times that I still deal with mental health and mental illness, should I say. People will reach out to me, and I literally put those things to the side because I know they were sent to me for a reason. There was actually a time in my life where I felt embarrassed or I felt judged because of what I was going through. It wasn't illness was not something that was popular that you hear a lot of people talking about at the time, and I just did not understand what it was that I was going through. During those times, I felt like an outcast. I was attending a few different churches, and when I did go in the hospital, and my mother reached out to those churches that I was going to, um, she asked that the pastor or somebody from the church would come and check on me and either pray for me or just see how I'm doing. And I never heard from those people. Not to say that all churches are like this, and I'm not putting a bad stamp on churches, but I really just don't believe that they knew what those things were. Usually they would cover it up by, why don't you come to the church so we can pray over you, or that maybe this is this is a spirit and we need to get this out of you. But it's not a spirit. It is a chemical imbalance. And that's not something that you control. You are not crazy because you have a chemical imbalance. Was I judged by others? Yes. Did I lose some people along the way? Yes. And just like I said about the church, I just don't think that they understood what I was going through. And it was hard for me to describe what I was going through to anybody. If you were to share some of those stories or the things that you went through in a hospital, people would think something's really wrong with her and we probably should send her back. But these things were actually happening to me. So now I'm very transparent with the things that I talk about, and I have no problem with worrying about if someone's going to judge me. My last breakdown happened over 20 plus years ago, and I'm still standing. Matter of fact, I'm standing stronger than ever. I wrote my first book in 2017, Coco's Chronicles. You can find it on Amazon. I am now certified through NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, as a facilitator in several of their programs. You all may not remember me, but in 2018, I was the motivational speaker for the conference in 2018. At that time, it was a scary process. I didn't know how I was going to be received. But once I got on the stage and I started interacting with the crowd, it was as if I received my wings. I was finally able to openly talk about my story and to share without judgment. Since then, I have been blessed with many opportunities, and I take none of those for granted. So, navigating through this pandemic has been quite an obstacle for me. I am an extreme extrovert. I love people. I love connecting to people. I love going to events and talking and getting to know new people. So, this pandemic has been, it has been kind of hard. So staying at home, trying to figure out Zoom, trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do for myself in the house? The first week I was cleaning up things and purging things and getting rid of things. And it was just getting used to being at home and it being my new normal. However, staying at home can be kind of hard being an extrovert. I had to find creative things to do in order to keep me from slipping back into darkness. It's easier said than done. How once you say you conquered something, things on TV, the news, social media, a lot of those things pour into what you see, what you put into your mind, and how you react to them. So the things that I started doing to get me out of that space, I started walking and listening to motivational people speak, um, Christian music, and walking seemed to be very good for me because I was outside. I was getting vitamin D. I was in the sunshine, and like I told you before, the sunlight on your face just does something to your body. It lifts your spirits. It increases your energy, and you just feel good and you feel rejuvenated. So one thing I did was I purchased some coloring books. Yes, I purchased some adult coloring books, crayons, colored pencils, markers, just so that I could sit. Sometimes you have to do things that you don't have to think a lot about. And basically, it was trying to keep myself from coloring in the lines. I remember as kids, we would always try to figure out, well, if you color outside the lines, then it's messy. But even as an adult, sometimes we do color out of the lines. So what? So Get you some coloring books and keep them away from your kids. That is the best feeling in the world because basically you're taking care of the child that's inside of you that has dealt with a bunch of trauma. I also did a major purge in my house. My closet is always my issue because I am a wardrobe stylist. So now I try to get things out of my closet as soon as possible that I know that I'm not going to wear, whether I give them away, if I'm having a sale, something, or even on Poshmark. But I get rid of those things because purging is major. I say purging because we tend to hold on to things that no longer serve us, and we hold on to them for too long, and they just collect dust, just like things in our lives. I did a live before, or maybe it was a YouTube video, where I talked about the relation between having a cluttered closet in your mind. If you think about how cluttered your closet gets or how messy you allow your bed to get, it's almost a direct reflection of your mind. Because when you go back into your room, it's like your thoughts and everything you're doing is all over the place. And you're trying to focus on one thing. So even if it is taken step by step, making your bed one day, I have been making myself get up as soon as I get out of the bed and making the bed because when I come back, then it's set. I don't have to worry about straightening the blankets out, and I feel more organized in doing that. I then began to start organizing my cabinets, getting rid of stuff. We just moved to New York a year and a half ago, so we don't have a lot of things. So it's good because I'm able to keep more of a control over what we need and what we don't. So I'm not a minimalist by any means. I love things, if you know me. But it's just keeping track and organization in your home. The biggest thing for me is journaling. I don't do it every day. If I have a dream that I remember, I write it down. When I read my Bible or if I read something that's inspirational, I write it down because I can use it for something else. Or if I'm having a hard time, I can refer back to it. It's good to journal and to make sure that you put dates in there so that you can refer back to that at a later time once you have grown and done some work in your life. It makes a huge difference. It's not so much to go back and say, oh, woe is me. It's more so to peek back on all the things that you have accomplished since you wrote in it last. Well, not this year, last year, we had a major loss in our family. My mother passed due to heart disease, and me being here in New York was hard trying to have closure with that. I did have some special time with her before this. A month before she passed, I went back to Texas and I spent 3 weeks with her in the hospital every day, making sure she was okay. And those were very special moments. But then coming back, and because of the pandemic, not being able to do a proper burial for her immediately because we didn't know if it was going to pass or not. Um, Having mental illness and losing a loved one and being far away is very hard for me because you can't be there with your family to mourn. You have to find ways in order to mourn on your own, and it's very hard. You have to do a lot of talking, get into some type of therapy, and surround yourself with people that are going to support you. It's hard to lose someone at any time of your life, but it seems to be a little harder during this pandemic. It also doesn't help watching the news every day and seeing the numbers go at an all-time high, the visuals of them loading people in trucks. It's just a lot to take in. Find ways in order to not see those things by turning the TV off, disconnecting from social media. So I also posted on my slide different things that you can do to lift your spirits, even though you may be far away. You may be in the same city with your family and friends, but you can't go because to see them because of this pandemic. Create Zoom calls, family Zoom calls, where you have as many family members that want to participate. Or maybe you want to do a double date night with another couple. My husband and I do that from time to time. We'll cook dinner and then we'll hop on with them and we'll have a double date night. Do family group calls, reach out to people that you haven't talked to in a long time. Um, I know that being far away, we don't get to see the family that we like to all the time or that we were around. But there's also family members that I have in other states that I don't get to talk to on a regular basis. So I have made myself reach out more, call, text, but I've been trying to call more because it's easier to connect with them that way. Once again, do not forget as a professional to make sure that you document the proper session for this session so that you will receive your proper CEUs. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope I said something to inspire you to awake whatever that is inside of you that needs to be worked on, whether it's going to therapy, getting some type of medication, whatever it is you have to do for self-care is so important. Just because you fall down does not mean that you can't get back up. This is Nicole Conway. Make sure that you take care of yourself first, each other next, and don't forget to govern yourselves accordingly.